Into the bins over the window seats. These are the only bins that will accommodate larger overboard.
They put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you poop him.
Oh my God.
So what?
Get more gas?
Maybe for tomorrow.
I mean, well, you're gonna have him driving around? Do you have a family?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
I'm just asking, like,
Oh, no,
I'm
I'm
asking if the man has a life.
Oh no, not yet, not yet. No.
Okay,
I'm
so-
still praying, man.
Okay, so you're gonna marry one of the king's daughters. You got a good job.
Nah, he related.
Oh,
his
you
cousin.
related. Oh,
Yeah.
no, you can't do like in Texas, marry your cousin.
Oh, that's West Virginia.
You can't marry your cousin.
So you know what I'm doing so long.
Oh, I don't eat chicken. Thanks.
One is 20 pesos.
I got that sound from
the waves of the sound of waves. So good.
Oh, I got it on my iPod.
Oh,
Went to Kona for
I love the raindrops. The
whole
sound of
album's
raindrops.
I got that too.
Oh.
so nice. I just like put it out there. Like,
I got some massage music too.
hear it.
Oh.
Then I got a whole album called Sleep.
It's gonna make you sleep.
Yeah, I got a whole.
It's a psychological thing.
That's right. Soothing sounds.
So what about if I
Yeah. Yeah.
2 city each. 2 city 50% for the big one.
You better give her
We're
$3.
gonna see her when we come back. Don't worry, when we come back, we're gonna see her.
Yeah. Big and city. Yeah,
You need Auntie's commentary for the kids?
What?
I do. I always give my commentary at the beginning of every video.
Gabi. Yeah. You want me to give you some musical anthem and whatnot to your video? Let it be lively.
I'm good. I'm just getting video.
Okay. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Doc.
got a wife from Egypt, your brother over here. You got a wife from Egypt. The Egyptian government, they don't hand it over. I think it was a few years ago. Not less than a year or two.
You see, the Egyptian government handed over her body?
Yeah, about it, because the husband was like, anytime the wife dies, they have to bring the wife over.
Fatima?
Yeah, Fatima. No, Fatia.
Fathia.
Fatia. Very nice Egyptian lady. That's the name of the sons. The first one is Gamal, the second one is Samia, the third one is second. Gamal is now, I think it's a media mogul in Egypt. Yeah, he's one of the leading newspapers in Egypt.
Last name still, but he takes his dad's name, right?
Yeah, it's the
Gotcha.
Of course, this is the history of Africa. This is where it all began. In this man, by this man, through this man. Kwame Nkrumah is a symbol of liberation for the entire continent. But I think the value of history is appreciated or recognized after those who made it no longer live. Nkrumah's statement that has captivated my heart and has actually propelled me towards some of my causes today is this statement.
The one where he says we're not poor?
No. He said the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless there's a link up for the total liberation of Africa. I say the same thing. The traditional institutions and culture and values is meaningless unless our traditional institutions are empowered to live, because we are going to one day export these values to societies of the world which is deprived of true human values. Humanity, selflessness, family values, love, camaraderie, laughter, and joy. These are the essence of African behavior. But over the years, through importation of foreign ideas, which was made for us to believe that this is civilization, had affected and chipped away our own values and culture. Driving down here, I was looking around and I saw women, and most of the women I see are dressed in Western culture clothing. In actual fact, we have replaced our own traditional clothing for Western clothing. Whereas we appreciate Western civilization, not to forget that we also are people of civilization. We have our own civil, cultural interpretations of the world around us. And as I stand here at the museum, this is the man who made that statement. He was born in a very little village called Nkrofo. And today, part of his village is completely forgotten. His culture is partly forgotten. And great men and great women in our society usually are forgotten. But the story ought to be told for generations to come. This is where African American sons needs to come and see a man who used to be a shoe shiner, who washed dishes to live, a man who preached part-time to make a living, a man who went to prison, and the day he was discharged from prison or released from prison, he went straight into parliament or took over leadership of a nation, whose belief and his determination to mobilize and organize Africans, particularly Ghanaians, around a common cause, saying that we are determined and we are able to take care of our own destiny. We are able to manage our own affairs. We are able to see the future within our context. He made it happen. And here is that great man. He is a symbol of hope, not only for Ghana, but for the continent of Africa. This man began a work that Mandela came to finish. So whenever we talk about Nelson Mandela from South Africa, it is important for us to put a light in West Africa. As you know, Ghana is the center of the world. Ghana is the center of the whole world. As you see, it is the center of the world. We are right in the center of the world. And this is a man who fought for the center of the world to affect the other part of our continent. I take my inspiration from him as a traditional ruler. I take inspiration from Nkrumah. He was a minister of the gospel. Besides his other disciplines of education, he was a minister of the gospel. He went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania.
Thurgood Marshall School.
Exactly. And also, he went into England, lived in England a little bit. And when it became necessary for him to come home, he came to Africa, came back to Ghana, the land of his fathers. And I think the world over have to celebrate this great leader, his inspiration to our democracy and self-determination. I am grateful to have a man like Kwame Nkrumah to breathe inspiration to my endeavors today. What a man. May our generation not forget him, generations to come not forget him. But it takes people who are selfless and who believe in the cause and hope that their lives will not be meaningful to anyone unless they continue the struggle and the fight that Africa can be free. We want to be free, not to be independent. We want to be free so that we are interdependent. We want to be free so that we can share our knowledge, wealth, and also resources with the rest of the world, without the world taking it from us by force or finding methods and ways to control our destiny. We have to tell the story. We have to fight for what is right and what is fair. We have to fight based on our conviction and our moral values. We have to fight. And when I mean moral values, I'm not talking about Republican agenda, as we call it in the West. I'm talking about our moral values, what gives us existence and a full meaning of expression as a people. Kwame Nkrumah, the man that God used to free us so other African nations will see the possibility of freedom and independence from colonial rule. He has done well. May his soul rest in peace and his work live on. And I may say this, Nkrumah never died. He fell asleep with our fathers after his struggle, but his name and his works still lives on. Therefore, he lives in our hearts.
tell because he was he presented the African Journalist of the Year, and that's the last award. He worked for Ghanaian Radio. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I got the booklet at home. A guy from no, not Tanzania. No, it's Zimbabwe. It's over on HIV Zimbabwe. Obsession. The excitement continues. I want to tell us what obsession is. No, it's excitement. Pure obsession. Okay. Joint's called papaya. Papaya. Popeyes. Give me a 3-piece. Give me a 3-piece things with breast spicy Cajun rice. Huh? Oh, well, yeah, that's where the name came from. Oh, yeah. Popeyes.
And it goes in more so
I love that yellow. I've been looking for a yellow outfit like that. I've been looking for that color over there. Where? What city? Where is it? What, Popeyes?
You did Frankie's.
Hi.
My friend,
Hi.
Dash me money to buy food.
I don't have any money, Doc. I can't help you. Hey, you got a CD?
No, get Frankie's Club.
You ain't got a CD? Y'all ain't got a CD for Lil Man? He look just like... You a little hater. You a hater. He look like a male version of Raquel. That boy look just like Raquel. Yeah, I got a little video.
This is where the action is. Oh, they got Chinese food here. Is it good?
They have lots of Chinese
I
restaurants.
like Chinese food.
That's right. Spicy. That's my woman spicy, my food spicy. Don't do no blame no blame women. Man, for man.
It's crazy. Be sitting around and like, oh, that rolling mountain. He's funny. He's a funny guy.
Folks always do that. They like, right? They like, man, I ain't been out. You that funny. There's somebody's house on that hill up there?
Yeah.
is another voice. Like, I don't cancel your back. I didn't see. If I say, what about movie is not why it's strong. No one will hear. Like, are you negativity? 100% say, as I answer, so for the eyes, cancel. Yes, I mean, probably, I just said, yeah, put me out. And I have to try, yes, take it in your back. That all the we do our place now, negative to put up Africa. This talk to me is about praising people. No. I know you want to go out, but we are going to be much more possible.
Oh, okay.
So I can polish my English. That too strong. We are the same people, but because of the scripture and son, we lost each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we are very glad to see you home.
We're glad to be here.
So you know up there? Up there. See your back?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fort. Yeah, built by the Dutch people. 1637. And this one was built by the Portuguese in 1482. Yeah, and this one is a compass. You know, these days there is no watch. So they use this to tell time. So enjoy your visit.
All right, we'll do.
Yeah, I'll see you
Thanks.
there.
This is some type of symbol here. I haven't figured out what it is yet, but you'll see it better from the castle.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
And I'm Patty.
Patty? Roland Martin.
Patty Brown Christensen from New Jersey.
All right, from Chicago and also New York.
Hi, Elena Herklatz.
Elena? Roland Martin.
Nice.
How you doing?
Jackie Martin.
Nice to meet you. Patty Johnson. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Philip. Good morning.
How you doing, Philip? Roland Martin. Good to meet you.
Sandra. Nice to meet you.
A very good morning to you all. You are welcome. My name is Philip Amwomisa. But before we start the tour, we'll first look into the background history of this place. And as the tour progresses, if there's any question, please don't hesitate to ask. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to arrive on the coast of Elmina in 1471. They came along with European goods like guns, gunpowder, spirituous liquor, tobacco, ricket, among others. And they were basically exchanging these for gold, ivory, later spices. So their system of trade at that particular time was the barter, exchanging goods for goods. The major commodity that the Portuguese were much interested in was the gold. And they could say the rate at which our locals here were giving out their gold gave them the impression that the land could be in abundance of it. And they therefore named this place Almina in their language, meaning the mine. So we here couldn't pronounce it properly and it was corrupted to today's Elmina. And that invariably became the name of the town. And that isn't to say that we did not have a name before they came. We had. Our name was Anomansa, and Anomansa simply means inexhaustible water. 1482, that is 11 years later after they had arrived, more zeal for gold motivated one of the Portuguese captains called Don Diego de Azambuja. He came along with 600 soldiers made up of carpenters, masons, and artisans who came here to see. The then chief of Elmina called Nana Kwame Nansa negotiated with him, and he gave the Portuguese this portion of the land. And it is important to note that that was the first time a title to a land was transferred from an African chief to an European. And before, this place was full of rocks. So the Portuguese had to quarry, get a level ground before putting up this border. And the rocks that the building is standing on it today is sedimentary rocks, and it's said to be 100 meters beneath the earth. And upon completion, they named it after one of their saint patron in Portugal called Saint George's. So this is Saint George's Castle or Elmina Castle. To the Portuguese, they had two reasons of building the castle. One, they wanted us to believe that this was only built to protect their trade and their traders, and two, to have rooms for their missionaries who were coming to spread Christianity. And in the early 16th centuries, all the rooms on the ground floor in the castle were being used as warehouses or storerooms. But when it shifted from gold and others to human trade, they then converted or transformed these same warehouses into holding cells or dungeons where the Africans were kept. And in total, the castle is talking of a minimum of 1,000 people at a time, 400 women, 600 men. And I believe we should also understand the fact that the Portuguese here in Elmina did not get up one day and said to themselves that they want to go into slavery. At least something brought about it, or something might have happened somewhere. 1441 was the first time ever the Portuguese started taking Africans to Portugal. And the one who did the capturing was called Antônio Gonçalves, but in some books it's called Antonio Gonzalez. And he was one of the explorers of Prince Henry of Portugal. He came to a place in Senegambia called Rio de Oro, which means River of Gold. When he was going back to Portugal, he captured 10 Africans, others are saying 12. When they got to Portugal, the prince saw them, and he was very, very happy for two reasons. One, he wanted the most intelligent ones among them to be trained to become missionaries to hasten the spread of Christianity. Two, some to serve as interpreters when they come back to Africa. But however sad, when these people got settled over there, they never came back as intended or planned. They ended up in the palaces and plantations as slaves. And since then, no European explorer came to Africa when he was going back without an African captors. That is why others are of the view that possibly the Portuguese had that in mind before building this castle, simply because they started taking Africans in 1441. 30 years later, they got to Elmina in 1471. In 1482, the castle was built. The Europeans suggest that by taking Africans to Portugal, making us becoming Christians, they were doing us a favor. By so doing, they will save our souls and we go to heaven. The situation changed when the Spaniards got to America and the West Indies, used the Native Americans called the Amerindians or Red Indians to work on sugar, tobacco, cotton plantations. The story says Spanish brutalities, overwork, and the effect of European diseases decimated the indigenous population. So it had to stop. And there was this Catholic priest, whose name is always mentioned, Bartholomew de las Casas. He suggested to the Spanish crown to arrange for Africans, which to him are much stronger and were doing the same work under similar climatic conditions. So in 1512, 1515, thereabouts, 50 Africans were taken from Spain to Hispaniola, now Santo Domingo. And when they were tried, they proved physically strong. The demand for our ancestors started coming in, and that marked the beginning of what is termed the unfortunate transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade is also known as the triangular slave trade, simply because the network involves Africa on the eastern side, the New World on the western side, and Europe to the north. And every effort into the study of slave trading, especially what became known as transatlantic slave trade, should carry with it cautions, and it deserves on one side and condemnation with no uncertain terms on the other side. Truly, it is the most heinous crime committed against one race and continent to the benefit of other races and other continents. And its effect is being felt today after over 150 years of its abolition. And slavery itself can be defined as a process whereby a person becomes a slave. And a slave being a person who is legally owned by someone else and who works as a servant for that person and has little or no personal freedom. Putting this into perspective. Shh. Alex. Shh. Alex. Wait. Truly, it is the most heinous crime committed against one race and continent to the benefit of other races and other continents. And its effect is being felt today after over 150 years of its abolition. And slavery itself can be defined as a process whereby a person becomes a slave. And a slave being a person who is legally owned by someone else and who works as a servant for that person and has little or no personal freedom. Putting this into perspective, one could then say that slavery in one form or the other has been with man from time immemorial. Not in Africa as it is being perceived, but among the Jewish, the Greek, and every Asian society on the surface of the earth. However, it is clear that it's from Africa and Africa alone that millions upon millions of our people were first forced across the Saharan desert and the Atlantic Ocean and scattered all over the world. And it indeed from Africa alone that for the past 400 years, her people were subjected to the worst human atrocities ever to happen on the earth. The continent and Africans all over the world today have not fully recovered from what happened in the past. Long before the coming of the Europeans into Guinea Coast of Africa, our local people here themselves had slavery already in existence. But who a slave was and how a slave was treated could not be compared to what happened here. To many, the right word to describe those under the system was the indentured servant, in that that person to a large extent had right. He could marry, raise free kids, acquire property, pay the price on his head, and he would automatically freed. He or she would not be killed without any justified reasons. He was clothed, sheltered, fed, and protected. And it was very, very difficult to identify a slave from a free man. And one thing unique that happened in the system was that a slave could shift from being a slave to a royal. And how could that happen? If the man proved to have the military or managerial abilities, he becomes the caretaker of the master's house. And descendants of such became royals. Female slaves could become wives to royals. They ceased to be slaves. And descendants likewise also became royals. Today in Ghana, many are the chiefs of the various communities, villages and towns whose ancestors were not royals before, but the perceived slaves. So this was in the system before the Europeans came. To the Europeans, a slave will always be a slave, and a slave is the absolute property of the master. He has no protection against the wickedness of the master, and he is a tool to be used and discarded when it's good. One thing to me, very, very sad, when this evil trade got started is that the Europeans themselves couldn't have gone to the various places to gather millions upon millions of Africans who went to the various dungeons. Basically, we could talk of three ways. One, we have Africans moving with the Europeans to gather Africans. We have the Europeans capturing some by themselves, and we have Africans bringing their fellow Africans to allege African traders and from them to the Europeans. And if there's one thing that we would like to single it out in most cases is intertribal wars. In the olden days, people were limited to tribes and kingdoms. One tribe did not see the fellow tribe as brother or a sister. So in terms of wars, those captured as war prisoners were brought to the Europeans in exchange for weapons. And we shouldn't forget the fact that the introduction of guns into the African system by the Europeans intensified into tribal war. The more they go into wars, the more they get prisoners of wars for for the Europeans. When the Portuguese were here, well established in this able trade, to be a little bit general, all the European states wanted this particular castle, which they considered to be at a very strategic point. So the Dutch then became jealous of the profits the Portuguese were making. So in 1596, 1625, the Dutch attacked the Portuguese here, but they were defeated because the two attacks came from the seaward section, where the defense there was very, very strong. So in 1637, some of the local people in the village became fed up with the activities of the Portuguese here. So they themselves went to Moray. And Moray is a village 20 kilometers east of this place, where the Dutch were residing, assisted the Dutch to an inland route up there called Hail Saint Jago. So the Dutch started attack from the seaward section again, directing the attention of the Portuguese over there. That's when the Portuguese thought they were putting a good defense. They had bombardment coming from the inland section. And on the third day, they could no longer fight. To be precise, 29th August 1637, the Dutch took control over the castle. The question to ask is, why did the local people worry themselves to assist the Dutch to fight the Portuguese here? One, the Portuguese tempered with the scale that they were using to measure, therefore exploiting the local people here. The locals were disenchanted with the advent of the transatlantic slave trade. And three, when the Dutch were in that village, they were still trading gold, ivory, and spices. So they thought by helping the Dutch to fight the Portuguese here would bring an end to the slave trade. But surprisingly, when the Dutch took over, were they better? No, they were the opposite. They further extended the place to contain more slaves. 1807, the English officially came out to abolish it. The Dutch also did the same in 1814, but it never stopped. So from 1814 right until 1860, we came to have the illegal slave trade in time. So slavery was finally abolished in 1860. And 12 years later, when this castle was no more being beneficial to the Dutch, they sold it to the British on the 6th of April, 1872. And that isn't to say that the British never took part. They did, but they used Cape Coast Castle and not Elmina Castle. When the British took over, they turned this particular castle into sub-administration